take questions during the session. We'll work those in, and we also do a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions on anything not related to the session, that we will work in at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Antoinette LaGrossa, and we are going to be talking about how to use Movable Alphabet in your homeschool. The Movable Alphabet is truly one of those many Montessori materials, but really one of those that is going to be used very often, pretty much by every child. It's one of those building blocks, and it is literally a building block that is used for creating and building words. And we know how kids love to build. And today, by the way, is Maria Montessori's birthday. She was born in 1870, so she is a 70s girl, just like some of us. I know I am a 70s girl. I'm a 1970s girl, though, instead of an 1870s girl. We do, Schiller Learning has a promo code, and it is simply Maria, and that's going to give you free shipping on any order that is good for today for her birthday. Okay, and Dr. Montessori tells us that not only does language fuse men into groups and nations, but it's the central point of difference between the human species and all others. Language lies at the root of that transformation of the environment that we call civilization. Language truly is foundational to pretty much all of our interactions, whether they are personal, academic, or business. So it's an important skill for our kids to embrace and not only learn the basics of, but love and thrive in. And Larry Schiller tells us that communicating means being able to speak, listen, read, and write well. And in Schiller Learning Language Arts, students are going to learn more than just the technical aspects of those. They're going to also be taught how to think about they and others may affect change in the world using language arts. And that's actually the first thing that Schiller Learning does with students, is to look at, what is language arts and why on earth are we even studying this? So it gets them to buy in right from the beginning. Now, in Montessori, although we use limited language when presenting lessons, which is going to enable the child to discover concepts through exploration and experience as opposed to a lecture. There's many opportunities for organic language process. That's going to be having conversation. And you've been doing that with your child since birth. One of the things you want to keep in mind as you do converse with your child is to avoid baby talk. Try to use good enunciation as well as grammar. So the conversation that you have with your child is important. Crucial part of that conversation, by the way, is your listening. I mentioned the listening skills as being part of communication skills. You want to be sure that you leave sufficient white space, pauses in your conversation with your child so that they're able to formulate responses and be comfortable in that conversation. Imaginative play, role playing, that's another wonderful reading readiness skill for children. Reading and then being able to retell a story. So that's you reading to the child and them being able to retell that. And by extension, that is going to be introducing new vocabulary as well as new ideas to your child. The learning of sounds in all of these language building activities indirectly prepares children for both reading as well as writing. It's, again, important to use real words. Of course, in your imaginative play, you can be a little more free in that, but in general, you want to use real words and avoid baby talk. The vocabulary, if you were in the session yesterday, I had mentioned that um, the importance of reading to your child on a daily basis and how that really helps them to be exposed to so much more vocabulary than they would be just through conversation. And kids have an easier time decoding words that they have been introduced to already through either conversation or through being read to. So developing that vocabulary is really important. Okay, couple of tips before we start using the movable alphabet. Oh, and I do have a set here with me. I have, there'll be some on the screen, but I also wanted to show you. Now, this is a smaller set than what is included with the Schiller Learning Language Arts Kit A. I'm simply showing you this set because the larger set was a little difficult to hold on camera and I don't have an overhead here. Okay, so comes in a box. Now, we do have a storage hack for you if your set does not come with a box, and that's 2 ice cube trays set into a tray that you can carry them, and then that gives you the perfect amount of slots for all of your alphabet. One of the beautiful things about this, aside from simply the quality of the wood, and this is the same, just smaller set than what's in the Language Arts A. You've got the tray lid. This can function double as your tracing tray. So this is nice because you get 2 purposes out of that aside from just the alphabet. And look at that. There's actually some quinoa in my movable alphabet from using it in proximity with the tracing tray. We're going to look at that a little later. But this is the star of the show. And that is going to be your movable alphabet. These tips are going to make communication more effective and ultimately the activities that you're doing with that movable alphabet. But these are general things you can really apply to anything. So you want to speak to a student only after making intimate eye contact. This eye contact occurs when both sets of eyes are at the same level. It does not work if you're standing above or below the student. That said, achieving the same level eye contact by bending at the waist does not imply the kind of respect, the give and take that's going to be required for the student to readily engage. So instead, bend at the knees, which is also ergonomically going to just be better for you. So working with a young child, go ahead, get down at their level, make that same level eye contact. It's going to draw you into closer, more meaningful communication with the child. They're going to feel more comfortable in responding back to you, as well as with receiving what you are saying to them. When speaking, be aware of your tone of voice. This is something that I remind my children of frequently. Tone of voice. It's often not what we say, but the tone of voice that we're using when we say it. And in homeschooling, you're going to achieve best results when you use a calm, respectful voice, even when your expectations are non negotiable. And this is very effective too when your non negotiable expectations are not being met, to continue and do those reminders with that calm, uh, respectful voice and not responding in a way, escalating tone of voice or body language and things. Kids tend to take note of that. I happened to experience it yesterday with one of my own kids not having met a non negotiable expectation, and he responded very quickly to that calm, respectful tone of voice. And my voice, I have to tell you, is a little scratchy today. Um, my allergies seem to be getting worse by the day as we move into fall. Okay. And then the volume of your voice also makes a difference in how the student responds. And students are used to adults speaking to them in loud voices. And you command attention because a student may find it extraordinary that you are using that low volume voice. And I will even not maintain a low volume voice, but lower my voice if the kids are starting to get a little rambunctious, be distracted, and their listening skills aren't quite what I had expected them to be. I will actually go ahead and lower my voice, which gets them all to turn attention back to what is being said to them. Now, after the novelty wears off and the surprise at that low volume voice, the warm, supportive communication, even when firm, is going to continue. And this, by the way, works with people of all ages. So I would urge you to try out, especially the low volume voice with adults, but the eye contact and that calm, respectful tone of voice as well. Those are just good communication skills in general. So that brings us to the star of the show, that movable alphabet. And there is that better overhead picture than what you were able to see when holding up. Now, this is that larger set that is included in the Schiller Learning Language Arts Kit A. It is available separately as well. And if you were not in the beginning of the session, if you have any questions, do put those into the chat box. We work those into the presentation. If you have any questions that aren't related to Movable Alphabet, still go ahead and ask those. We'll just save anything unrelated to the end at the Q&A session. Okay, so the Movable Alphabet is a fabulous wooden Montessori material. It is color coded. It has, of course, the 26 letters of the alphabet. The vowels are in blue. The consonants are in red. That color coding really helps the vowel patterns pop out of the words. So you'll start off by bringing the movable alphabet to the work area. Montessori, if you've been in any of our sessions, you've probably heard us talk about the work mat. Montessori uses a work rug for defining the workspace, and it helps to focus attention and promote good work habits as well. So you'll bring the movable alphabet to the mat and invite your child to join you. Introduce the set as a whole. So don't jump right into introducing all the letters. It's simply, it's going to be on the mat. You're going to point to that set and say, this is the movable alphabet. So don't worry about trying to introduce all of the sounds or letters at once, because new information is best digested in small bites. And we're going to start, introducing that letter by letter. Now, phonemic awareness, which is really phonics, is the fundamental understanding that letters represent sounds. Because this is so important, we teach the sounds the letters make first rather than the letter names. And this is not the same thing as the child learning their alphabet. Children often learn ABCs by rote memory without truly understanding the alphabetic principles and that phonemic system that they are representing sounds. In Montessori, this is not the case. The letters are introduced in an order designed for the children to be able to read quickly and spell simple words as they go. And we will take a look at that. So A isn't even the first letter that we would introduce. It is one of the first four. We start with the progression doing C, then M, A, and then T. Okay, and then phonemes are the smallest unit of sound in language. So in the word cat, for example, you hear 3 of those. English, of course, is an alphabetic language in which letters stand for sounds. In order to read and write effectively, children need to be able to detect sounds. The Montessori method is very strong in phonics for the early reading. And the movable alphabet helps to make those sounds and the connections they have to letters very concrete and real for the child, because not only are they going to be able to see the letter, but they're going to be able to feel it. They're going to be able to manipulate that along with other letters for creating words. So it really brings those sounds, those words to life. That. Okay. Any second now that will move for us. That's frozen. Yeah, I got used to Zoom being nice to me. It hasn't been um, freezing me for a while. Okay. Excuse me. Alrighty. Now you want to avoid adding artificial vowel sounds to consonants. So for example, the letter C makes the k sound. There is, in the books, to differentiate between simply saying C or making the sound k, there is a UH that is put after the consonant. That is to let you know that you're making the letter sound as opposed to saying the name. You will emphasize, prolong the consonant sound, but you're not going to add k, to the sound of the letter when you are making that. And that is something that a lot of instructors, even classroom educators, do when they're teaching letter sounds. So this is k, not ka. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And when you see that in, if you are using Schiller Learning Language Arts, it's simply to differentiate between saying C or making the letter sound. So emphasize, prolong the consonant sound, exaggerate the movement and placement of the lips, the mouth, the throat. Um, but that sound And there is a little bit of a vowel sound that comes with the letter sound, but it is not that additional uh, syllable that a lot of people unintentionally add when they're introducing letter sounds. Okay, you can also have your child place their hand on your throat, your mouth, your lips to feel the vibration of the sound when they are beginning to make that. This can be really helpful if your child is having difficulty when making letter sounds, but can also just be, fun exploration of learning something new. But definitely if your child is being challenged by a particular consonant, go ahead and have them try that. You can also have the child watch you make the sound side by side in a mirror, then, watch themselves trying to make the sound. A picture is worth 1,000 words. That works for phonics as well. And then something else fun to do is to use different volume and pitch while you are practicing sounds. For sounds that are accompanied by a puff of air when they're being made, such as ha or pa, you can have the child, place their hand in front of your mouth to be able to feel the breath that is made in making that sound. Okay, so now we've got, sounds mastered. When we are working with the movable alphabet, it is another example of the execution of another quote from Dr. Maria Montessori, and that is, do not tell them how to do it. We want to show them. Um, and because when you are telling them, they're going to be watching your lips and focusing on listening to the words, hopefully, as opposed to thinking through the steps. When you show them, they are going to be concentrating on what is being done, and it will elicit their inner desire to do it themselves. Okay. And we're going to be able to do that with the movable alphabet, showing them as opposed to telling them. As with all learning activities, keep in mind learning can and should be fun. I mean, there are, things that, new skills that your child will be challenged with, and, they may have to, work through some tough spots. But overall, we want learning to be fun because that is what, keeps that passion going. And you see kids in early education, whether that's preschool, kindergarten, early elementary, they love learning. They're excited for it. And then through a variety of reasons, bit by bit, they lose that passion for knowledge and learning. We don't want that to happen. So let's keep learning fun. Uh, as you're working with the movable alphabet, you want to be sure to differentiate between common pronunciation or um, errors, which, we just took a look at some ways that you can work on correcting those, and reading errors. I'm having pronunciation errors. And so, some students may face challenges in their ability to pronounce certain sounds, but those challenges occur to issues that are related to speech rather than reading, and maybe due to simple normal progression of speech related to age. Uh, if speech difficulties do persist, by the way, it's always a good thing to have your child evaluated for any speech issues that may benefit from, therapy. So, there are normal age related things, but if they persist, keep in mind you may want to just get an evaluation. Okay, so for example, many children have difficulty with the R sound. I know that one of my siblings absolutely did. And in reading the word on the screen, read, they may say wed rather than read. That's a pronunciation error. It's much like writing numbers backwards and may be treated the same way, simply providing the correct sound and moving on, maybe giving them an opportunity to repeat the sound that you had made. Now, if the student doesn't grow out of those common speech errors by around 6 or 7, that's when you may consider consulting that speech pathologist. Now, if your child, instead of saying wed, is skipping the R sound altogether and saying ed, that is a reading error. So you want to pause, have them reread the word, and point to each letter as he makes the individual sounds and then blends them together, even if the R is mispronounced. So just be mindful of that difference between pronunciation and reading errors. And then again, read often to your child. They may face challenges, especially um, in decoding words that they have never been introduced to. And then you want to practice and build on reading as well as spelling words using letters that have been learned. And this is where, so the first 4 letters that, and this is a very common Montessori progression, there's probably 4 really popular progressions in Montessori for which letters do we introduce first. It's a fun thing to decide. And as I mentioned earlier, we actually use the order that's recommended by the Montessori Foundation, and that's starting with CMAT. So with those 4 letters, we are already able to start spelling and reading words. In a traditional approach to reading, spelling is not introduced to the child until they've been reading for some time. Um, with Montessori, 4 letters in, we are having the child practice encoding, spelling those words. And the encoding, the spelling, and the decoding, the reading, the decoding the phonetics of the words really reinforce each other. And so you want to practice both of those right from the very beginning. And so once your child has learned these 4 letters, give time for them to practice building and reading the different words that can be created from those. And then as you add new letters, you can continue on with that. Something else that you can do with your movable alphabet is to teach words that your child has objects of. So you can gather objects from around the house and then pair those with your movable alphabet as you are teaching to read that word. So that is another fun activity that you are able to do with the movable alphabet. You could then even use the movable alphabet to create nomenclature cards, taking a picture of your child's favorite collection and then creating the words with the movable alphabet and using that as the label on your picture card. If you're not familiar with Montessori 3-part cards, check out, there is a session on the Schiller Learning YouTube channel. There's also a couple of blog posts on the Homeschool blog how to use those. And no matter what language arts program you are using, the movable alphabet is a fabulous addition, and it does have benefit over the letter tiles. As I mentioned, not only can they see the letter, but they can actually feel the physical shape of that, helps them to internalize that information in an additional way. There's also multiples, so you're not getting just one or two of each of the letters. You get five of each consonant and 10 of each vowel. So you're going to be able to do a lot with those. And rhyming words, one of my favorite activities to do with the movable alphabet. Rhyming teaches kids how language works. It helps them to notice and work with the sounds within words. And when children are familiar with a nursery rhyme or a rhyming book, they learn to anticipate what that next rhyming word is going to be, helps them make predictions when they're reading, which is another important reading skill. Rhyming lends itself to better phonemic awareness, and that is the ability to break words into smaller parts, those smaller recognizable parts that they then are going to blend together. And that's another crucial skill for reading. So have fun with rhyming words. Uh, that, by the way, is why the assigned piece of literature in Chiller Learning Language Arts Kit A is the Mother Goose rhymes, because it's fun, nonsensical verses generally, but all of that rhyming is a very important part of a child's reading success, and it's just fun. It adds joy and whimsy to the task of reading. Now, as I mentioned, there is five of each consonant. You'll notice that I have got more than five words that end with OP. So you've got 10 of each vowel. The D and the P are, once you just flip it around, it looks like the same letter. And so with those two letters, you can do a little bit more, have some longer lists. But aside from, reusing other letters, you can just cycle out the beginning consonant and use your movable alphabet. And so lay out the word ending and then go through your box and look and use that sound. Does this make a rhyming word? Okay, how about this? B, bop, bop. Does that make a rhyming word? And then you can create the word cop and go through letter by letter to see what all words you can make. And then you can just remove some of those earlier word endings. And in that exercise, they are going to go through the alphabet in that alphabetical order, which will help them in their alphabetizing skills. Okay. And I went through those without. Okay, let's talk about spelling. So the color coding is going to help those vowel patterns pop out of the words. It also helps to differentiate between prefixes, suffixes, roots, syllables. So that color coding, because so much of the language and those parts is structured around vowels, it's going to help with all of that. So, if you have a child who is struggling clapping out syllables and is wondering what on earth you're doing, spell out the word with movable alphabet. It's going to help to make those syllables easier to find. Um, seeing the vowel patterns in words, the as I mentioned, prefixes, suffixes, the vowels, how they are working together, all of that is going to be made easier with the color coding of the movable alphabet. Now, if we were still at where we had just learned CMAT, CMT would be on one side of our work mat up at the top. You can put the consonants on one side, the vowels on the other. In that case, we would have only had A. But once we've introduced all of the letters, we can put them all out and explore what can be made with those. And then there's some different ways that we can go ahead and explore spelling. So one of them is to focus on the beginning sound. For example, maybe we want to find all of the words that we can create that begin with the R sound. And it's beneficial to, focus not just on the beginning, but, focusing on the end, the middle, creating that flexibility and the comfort with that flexibility in your child with the material. So now let's go ahead and focus on all of the words that we can create that have the ending sound of that T. Or maybe we're going to focus on the middle sound, and we've learned vowels A and I so far. So what are all of the words that we can make with those and the consonants that we've learned to this point? Or just open-ended, what words do you want to create with the letters? And one of the tips is that as your child is learning to read words, you want to be sure that they are practicing spelling them. Again, those two activities, the encoding and decoding, are going to reinforce each other. The movable alphabet can also be paired with the tracing tray so that as they're practicing building the words with their movable alphabet and reading those, they can trace those out and practice, forming the letter shapes then with that tracing. And then keeping in mind, again, learning can be fun. We want to keep that fun in. One of the ways of doing that is that open-ended exploration with the materials, even the movable alphabet. You might look at this and think that it doesn't serve much of a creative purpose, but you can see on the screen there that kids can come up with really amazing off-label uses for materials, even the movable alphabet. It can be used too for tracing letters and making decorative signs. So there are a number of things. Let your child have some free, just open-ended time with the material. It's going to encourage them to experiment. And then something else that you can do, not just with the movable alphabet, but all of your education, is to vary the location. Studies show that deeper learning takes place when the study location varies in both, time of day, the duration, the place, the environment, the lighting, all of those environmental changes, the environmental variety. It's great to take your learning outdoors with the movable alphabet in that box with the lid. It makes it very portable. And then, maybe your child practices spelling things that they're encountering in the outdoors. And it's just a new hook to, ignite that passion for learning and practicing, and maybe working through some things that they had found a little difficult prior to that. Reminder also that you want to embrace personalized learning. This is a tracking sheet that's used with Schiller Learning. If you're not using Schiller Learning curricula, you can absolutely replicate this. It is going to be beneficial, not just language arts, not just math, every curriculum, every subject. And that is to keep a list of lessons completed and any that need to be revisited. This, by the way, makes a curriculum very conducive to co-teaching so that without even having to confer with what's been done, maybe what wasn't quite as successful and would need to be reviewed, you with having jotted down the date, the minutes worked, lessons completed, lessons revisited, whomever you're co-teaching with can just come along and look at that and pick up where you left off without even having to confer. So it makes it very conducive to co-teaching. Um, so dad or mom can come in after work and spend 15 minutes doing an activity with the child without having to do any lesson prep with Schiller Learning Curriculum, but also without having to, spend time discussing where they're at. Now, the minutes worked. So one of the things that you may see with Schiller Learning Curriculum is that the lessons are of varying length and difficulty. And so we recommend working according to time. And this is a recommended time frame. If your child wants to go beyond that, we also recommend not interrupting a focused and concentrated child. So absolutely let them keep going. But 15 minutes is what we shoot for with a 3 or 4-year-old. And so whatever they do in that amount of time is what's right for them. And then we add 5 minutes a day for each additional year of age. So 5, 20 minutes, 6, 25 minutes. Um, and some days that'll be one lesson, other days it may be 3 or 4. And then when they're not solid on something, we are going to put that in that column for lessons to be revisited. Move on to other things because we don't want to frustrate, but periodically, maybe every 2 or 3 days, we're going to add that back until it is mastered. So, we homeschool because we want to tailor education to our child's needs. This learning management tool is a very simple, effective way of managing that. And we do want to tailor that repetition to the child's mastery, whether it's a single lesson and then, wow, they don't need to practice this anymore, but the book has 50 more pages. Move on. Don't bore them to death with things they already know. Or there's 4 pages of practice in the book. They don't have it yet. No problem. You can have the child, create additional practice problems and keep practicing that skill until it is mastered. The analogy that I like to use is tying your shoes. When we're first learning to tie our shoes, and you've probably seen this in your own child, they are super focused, super concentrated. It's taking all of their mental processing power and attention. They are making mistakes as they go along. Sometimes they do it wrong, have to start at the very beginning, or maybe they catch their mistake midway and just have to back up a step or two. And then as they practice more and more, it takes less of their processing power, less attention, less mistakes until they're able to do it without much thought at all. It's almost automatic and without error. And so convey that to your child and that you want them to take ownership of their education and practice things until it's like tying their shoe, whether it's a single time or 50. um, that's what is right for them. Have them take ownership of their education, and you'll really be able to watch them thrive. Final note is that, we as home educators can only help the work that is going on. So expose your child to the materials and activities that will set the stage for that work to happen. And this is going to wrap up the session for today. Did anyone have any questions that we did not get to during the session? And they can be in the general chat or you can direct message those. I think we got to everything that had been in there. And next week, we have an exciting session for you with Joshua from Brown Dog Gadgets with the paper circuits and walking your child through. We do have a promo code, Chiller Learning, that is going to give 20% off at the Brown Dog Gadgets website. So if you do not have the paper circuits kit for your child, do go ahead and visit their site. Amanda, are you able to pop that link into the chat? And then I'll be sending out another email with that as well. We have our paper circuits kit. Well, I guess I did need to find that. And again, that promo code is Schiller Learning. That's going to give you 20% off at Brown Dog Gadgets in the art and craft section. And it is a STEM project, by the way, or STEAM, because it's that electronics and art and creative. So it's one of those things that helps to get pretty much any child engaged in learning about circuits. Excellent. And that link is popped in there for you for Brown Dog Gadgets. But paper circuits, that's the project that they're going to be working on next week. Today, as I mentioned, is Maria Montessori's birthday, and we've got promo code Maria that's going to give you free shipping on top of the awesome deals at schillerlearning.com. Okay, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure to have you here, and we will see you next Tuesday and Wednesday.